You ever wonder what your personality says about you and how you interact with your environment? Well, join me, Marissa, each week as we dive deep into the Enneagrams and its 9 different personality types. So, let's get personal.
Hello, and welcome to Let's Get Personal with me, Marissa. So I guess we'll start off and just talking about how I made everybody here take the Enneagram test. And now people are not, there's just a lot that's happening now. And everyone's like, I'm a type 1, or a slick keeps going, he's like, I'm a type 4.
Yes.
Which does not mean you're better than anyone else. All the types are the same. Yeah, no.
Top tier.
And then, yeah, and some people are like, I'm not a 2. If you ever think you're not something, you're usually that number because you're like, I don't fit in. That's something that also happens a lot. Actually, that brings us into type 1s, which we're actually going to talk about type 1s today because we're just going to dive deep into that type and talk about it. Type 1s are the ones who also don't like being put in boxes a lot of the time. I have a friend who's a type 1, and whenever we tell him he's a type 1, he's like, don't tell me that I'm a type 1. Like, I don't want to be put into that box or that category. And we're like, you're a type 1. You're going to show that you are. So we'll just talk about type 1s. Type 1s each Enneagram has like a title, a little name of how you can easily refer to them refer to them in a way. So type 1s are the reformers. They can also be called the perfectionists. They really strive on perfection and always being, not right, but like in their brains, always being right and always having a rational explanation for anything that goes on in their life. So if they do something and someone asks them why they did it, they're like, oh, here's a rational explanation. Or even if one does something and nobody even asks them why they did it, they always have an answer to kind of combat if anybody were to ask them why. So they're the rational, idealistic type, and they're like some keywords. They're principled, purposeful, self-controlled, and a perfectionist. They like to be perfect in their own way. They want to make it so nobody can look at them and be like, that's wrong. Their growth number is a 7, and then their stress number is a 4. We'll go into that in a little bit. And they have a strong sense of right and wrong. They strive to improve things, and so their basic fear is of being corrupt or evil, or being defective. Like they don't have a purpose, or they don't, everybody looks down on them and it's like, oh no, you're bad. They don't want people to think negatively of them, ever. That's not a thing. Their basic desire for type 1s is to be good. They like to be good. They to have integrity, to be balanced. And so their key motivations, we're going to talk about that, is they want to be right, to be consistent with their ideals, and to justify themselves, to be beyond criticism so as to not be condemned by anybody. And again, talking about like they don't want to be critiqued. And think when they get stressed, they can get moody or irrational. And when they are and they're growing, they're learning about themselves, they can become spontaneous and joyful, which is fun. We have some characters that are type 1s and other people I like to look up, and one of the fun things about Enneagrams is people will categorize, they'll categorize fictional characters, and then real people also easily can get characters, but I like when they categorize fictional characters, and I think that's fun because then you're like, oh yeah, I relate to this fictional character. But people who are type 1s, like Joan of Arc, and then Michelle Obama. Celine Dion's also a type 1. And then fictional characters like Mary Poppins, Captain America, he's also a type 1. Count Dooku from Star Wars is a type 1. Rabbit from Winnie the Pooh, I believe Rabbit from Winnie the Pooh is a type 1. Anyone who will, they'll be like, why'd you do this? Like, we'll take Captain America, for example. If people like, I think it was Civil War, and they'd be like, oh, why did this happen? You'd always have a rational explanation. Be like, this is why I did this. Not even like rational, just like this is why I did this. And it's not like, oh, I just did this. Like, I did this because this, and then this, and then this. And even if they're wrong, they still have a counter argument. That's something I noticed. They usually have a counter argument. There's good stuff about them. They're great. Like, they're really good planners and very meticulous, and talented people. And they also like have a sense of a mission. They want to improve the world around them. They look at people and they're like, oh, how can I help? How can I make everything just better for everyone? Yes, and then they also need to justify their actions to others and then also themselves. I was talking to my friend yesterday. We were talking, and he's a type 1. He never took the test yet, but we kept telling him, me and my friend, we were like, oh, no, you're a type 1. He's like, how do you know I'm a type 1? Like, I've never taken this test before. And we're like, no, you're a type 1. And he's like, I don't like you guys categorizing me. And he kept coming up with all these like defensive mechanism, like arguments after we would tell him he's a type 1. I was like, that just continues to push that you're type 1 if you're listening to what we're saying about you. And we're like, oh, yeah, no, like, you always have a rational, like, you always have questions that you like to, type 1s like to ask questions, and then, so they can answer them in a way that they think is the right answer. So if they'll be like, oh, why is the sky blue? And then you'll be like, oh, I don't know, pigmentation thing, I don't really actually know the answer to that. They'll come out and be like, oh, I think it's because blah, blah, blah. And then like try to like, not prove, but like talk about their explanation, be like, this is why this is it. They learn, they're very good people. They like to learn and they like to understand stuff, but they will always have some counter argument to what you are asking them or you're saying to them. So they feel that they were right because they don't like to feel like they were ever wrong or they didn't know something. So they think of consequences of their actions. So they persuade themselves that they are head type rationalist who proceed only on logical objective truth. So like to always be correct and go on the truth. But ones are actually activists who are searching for an exceptional rational for what they feel they must do. They just want to kind of be accepted. They want to be like, oh, sorry, I hit the mic. They want to feel like they're accepted, and they, if they do something that's not correct, or if they have something that's wrong with them, or like they say something that's wrong, they're not going to be accepted, and like society's going to be like, oh no, shun you out. Don't do that. No, like society's not going to shun you out if you say something that's not justified or not all the time. Like, you don't always have to have a rational explanation for everything that you do. Sometimes stuff can just happen, and ones don't really do that. They're good. They're also strict with themselves. Misconception is that they're always a perfectionist. But they're not always perfectionists. They just like to have things the right way that they believe. They're not always perfectionists. Like, it's not like I always got to be perfect. It's just, it has to be the way that I believe is correct, or if it's not this way, it's wrong. So basically kind of like a perfectionist. Yeah, they like their own rules. They like to do stuff in a way that not benefits them, but goes with what they view. They do bend the rules a little bit sometimes. They're the people who will listen to the rules, but they're like, how can I make this for me in a way that is how I feel about it and like benefits me in a way that you can diverge from the rules but still like be following them, but what's a good example? I don't even know. Anything that's like, stuff that's between the lines. They like to follow those kind of things. They're like, oh, this is not official, but like, it's not illegal. I'll talk about, I guess, how yesterday, I'm not type 1, but I printed stuff out at my school's printer, and I figured out how to hook my computer up to the printer itself. And usually you have to pay to print stuff, but because I brought a cord and I plugged my own computer into the printer, I could print stuff for free. So it wasn't illegal, but it felt illegal. It wasn't. Like, nobody tell anybody I didn't do that. If anybody asked that I could get in trouble, I did not do that. But it wasn't illegal. Nobody said I couldn't bring my own cord and plug my computer in. Type 1s like to like find little things like that benefit them. I'll be like, oh yeah, I don't want to pay for this, so let's find a legal way to get around it. That's a tip. If you go to FAU, bring like a cord to like plug it into the I don't know what type it is, but you can like plug it into your computer, plug it into the printer, and then you can just print stuff for free off the printers. It's very nice. Also, type 1s are very reactive. So type 1s also are in the field of anger. That's how they deal with like stress and like stuff. They get angry easily. They're easily angered in a way where you can say something and it sets them off, and then they go off, and then they don't get like ragefully angry, but they'll get very defensive angry. And I was talking to my friend yesterday who's a type 1, and right away as we categorized him type 1, he got very angry defensively. And we're like, this is why you're a type 1. He's like, I'm not a type 1. Don't categorize me. Don't put me in a box. And we're like, we're not trying to put you in a box. But the more that you get defensive and angry about this, the more it puts you in that type 1 category. So they're also, easily triggered. They're led by their emotions. So if they feel something's wrong, like if they get angry, they're gonna get angry, and they're gonna get not like in a angry, like yelling way, kind of like in a what? I don't even know what ways. They're just kind of like not scary angry, but like yes. I guess Hulk angry where they're like no, blah blah blah, and they're like kind of not yell at you, but be like loud and defensive with their anger. But they also have high discipline. They like to be very disciplined and very, they like to think of themselves as being calm people. They're not always calm people. Stuff can set them off like that. You can ask the weirdest moral questions just to justify them. So they'll ask you like moral questions, and then you'll give your answer, and then they'll give their answer just because they want their answer to be justified, even if it doesn't match up with your answer. Because I've definitely noticed this is like anything that's morally, they'll be like, oh, why do you think this? And so you'll give your answer, and then even if they agree, they'll still tell you why they agree to justify their answer, to make them believe that what they think is right. And it doesn't always have to be right, and it's not always wrong. You don't always have to justify everything that you say, or think of a way that it's justified. That's not always like the biggest thing. But yeah, they'll just ask questions, and then you'll be like, oh, I think, yeah, I agree. And they'll be like, okay, but why do you agree? This is why I agree. And I'm like, thanks, friend. Let's see, I have more notes. We'll do wings. So for your wings in type 1, it would be a type 9 and type 2, because it would be the two wings that are right next to each other. So type, what did I put? Oh, yes. Type 1 wing, type 1 wing 9 is, so that's how we talk about wings. We'll be like, oh, I'm a type 2 wing 3, I believe. And it's, your wings, when you take the test, it's whichever number is next to you that you were the highest in. So if you're a type 1 and it doesn't even have to be the next number. Like your next number could be a 7, but if between the 2 and the 9, whichever one is higher, that is your wing. And because you're not always one personality type, you are always a mixture of 2, and that's also why you have your growth and your stress lines, because you're not put in a box. You're not in a box that categorizes you into one category. You have all these different like parts of your personality that vibe off of other places, like go into other personality types. And then, so a 1-wing 9, a 1-wing 9 is called the Idealistic. And they're generally calmer than other types. And they pose a strong sense of right and wrong. So they know what's right and they know what's wrong. And then they're usually like calmer and generally. And they're more open to new ideas and perspectives. Ones are usually set in their mindset. They like to learn, but they don't like to change their ideas or perspectives a lot of the time. So they're kind of hard to go off and be like, maybe we should think of this differently, and because they're set in their ways, and that's what they do. But 1-wing 9s are generally easier to talk and get these new ideas, because type 9 are passive, I guess that's the word. They don't like conflict. They like to avoid conflict at any means necessary and talk about, be like, oh, do you guys want to do this? If you guys don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. That's what 9s are. So a type 1-wing 9 would generally be calmer and would be like, oh, okay, I understand what you're doing and I understand your things, so like my thoughts are this. And then, understand and get why people have other views. They're usually more quieter and they're more withdrawn, keeping to themselves a little bit more, because type 9s, they like to keep to themselves. Type 9s are introverts, high introverts, where they keep to themselves and they like to be like not putting themselves out there in a way. I had to figure out what that one was. Hold on, give me one moment. I forgot to write down a little bit that I had, and I missed that. Where were you? Okay. So then type 1-wing 9s, they're usually actually drawn to, so none of these have careers that are like based off of like, oh yeah, if you're type 2, you're going to be a teacher. Yeah, I think that's actually one of them. Good job, me. It's not like if you're type 2, you're going to be a teacher. That's not always, official. But you can get a sense of what kind of fields people are going to go into based off of their types. And so type 1-wing 9s are usually drawn to careers in psychology, social work, journalism, and politics. People who, they have their views and they're very content on them. And they like to learn. Ones really like to learn. Very smart people, very intelligent people. And so those are the kind of fields that if you see people who are kind of going to those kind of fields, it's usually type 1-wing 9. Other times, it could be other people. But if you're a 1-wing 2, 1-wing 2 are focused on the livelihoods of other people. And they champion causes focused on meeting people's needs. Because for type 2, I'm a type 2. And type 2's their biggest category trait is that they like to help people. They like to be the one who, say someone will get hurt. They want to be the one that someone will go to. I know I feel this, and I'll probably dive into this next week, where my best friend, she broke her arm. And I wasn't even here. I was in Orlando. And she called me, and I was like, okay, I got this. I will call everyone I know, ask them if they can take you to the emergency room, the urgent care. And I'm like, just stay on the phone with me. And even though I wasn't there, I like to be the person that somebody will call and be like, okay, I got hurt. I need help. Let me call Marissa. That's a very type 2 personality. type 2s like to, as I categorize them, the mom friend. So if you're a type 1 wing 2, you want people to come to you for their needs, and you want to be the person who you focus on other people's needs. And even though you're type 1, you have your ideals and you want to be like perfect in your thing. You're like, how can I use my perfectionistic traits to help others and to put them into their field and I guess, help them achieve everything like that they can accomplish. So type 2ing 1s are drawn to careers in medicine, law, religion, and social justice. Yet again, a lot of type 1s are like political science. I think it's political science degrees. They have like those, law, social justice, politics, stuff that, you want to be perfect, not perfect, but like you want to have those views. Like a lot of past presidents, like I think Jimmy Carter was a type 1. A lot of past presidents, a lot of politicians are actually type 1s because it has those views of like, we're going to be perfect, I'm going to learn it all, and I'm going to make sure that I know everything about something. That's another thing. Everything I know about something before I go into it, not as necessarily as like I think a type 5s, they have to know everything before they go into anything. They make sure they know. But type 1s make sure they know everything so that they can never be told that they were wrong or something that they said is incorrect. Type 1s don't like being told that they are incorrect. That's a big no. Let's see what else is here. Martha Stewart is also a type 1, which I think is kind of funny. I don't know why I found that funny, but I did. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg's also a type 1. Hermione Granger is a type 1. I also find it really good. I like to categorize with like fictional characters, and I find that their fictional characters are really good to categorize with because everybody kind of knows these fictional characters. So if I say like Michelle Obama, not saying that not everybody knows Michelle Obama, but like we don't know Michelle Obama personally. But if I'm like going to say like Steve Rogers or Hermione Granger or Mary Poppins, people know those characters and they know what traits they have, and it's easy to categorize yourself and correlate to them and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I understand why she's a type 1, and then I understand why I'm a type 1. Like Hermione Granger's a type 1 because she likes to be perfect. They're very studious and school smart. Type 1s. Yes. Oh yes, and so compatibility. So type 1s like taking control in the relationship because they like to be the ones to plan and like the ones who not in charge, but like, be like, oh, I'm gonna lead this relationship. We're gonna do this, and we're gonna do that, and then they follow them because that is how it goes. Type 2 is actually the most compatible with type 1 in a relationship or friendship or anything, because type 2s like helping people, and type 1s not want to be helped, but they want to like justify anything and make sure that they are correct. So the type 2 is going to like help them, and type 2 is very reassuring. They will be like, oh yeah, this is like correct, or I understand. And type 1s like to be reassured a lot. They like to be told that what they are feeling is correct and that it's justified. They like to be told that. So type 2s are the people who are like, oh yeah, that is, I get it, I understand. And type 1s live off that kind of thing. They're actually not the best compatible. I think it was like a 9. Even though you can be a type 1 wing 9, they're not as compatible with a type 9s, because type 9s are they're I'm gonna look it up because I had it and then I forgot it. When did they not? No, so okay, we'll go back to like what they went well with. We'll start with that. Type 1s are the best with 2s and 7s. because yet again, we said 2s are task-oriented. A 1-2 partnership can be task-oriented. So, like 2s are very warm. 1s can be looked at sometimes as being very rigid or strict with themselves, or kind of like standoffish, people that you wouldn't necessarily go up to in like the supermarket and have a full conversation with them. I know I do that with random people. I mean, not right now, not because of COVID, but sometimes I'll be like standing in line at like a supermarket or Disney, and then I'll like talk to the people behind me. Type 1s are the people who wouldn't do that. They also the people that you wouldn't necessarily look at and be like, oh, I'm going to have a full conversation with you about pizza. They're not. They're kind of, I guess their heart's kind of like locked, or they're a little cold-hearted, not in like a bad way. They're great people. You can get so many interesting conversations out of type 1s. People who are type 1s, I could talk to them for like hours. They are so interesting, and their brains work so like fast, but in a way where like it's so interesting in what they think. I love it. They're great people. They are great people. But type 2, they're very heartwarming, and they like kind of like, I guess, frozen. They melt their heart, cold heart. I don't know why I said it like a Frozen reference. Don't ask. And so yeah, they like to encourage them. Type 1s like to be like encouraged. So type 2s are very like encouraging. They're like, oh yeah, that's correct, as I said. And then they're actually really good with type 7s, because type 7 is their growth line, I believe. Wait. Yeah, type 7 is their growth line. So when you are growing in your personality, as your personality is growing, you will become more of a type 7. In type 7s are very spontaneous. I guess you could call them the life of the party. They're very talkative. They not opinionistic, but they're very like the person who you go to a party and like, oh, that's a type 7, very personable, very easy to make friends. They can make friends super easy, and people can always like them, and they like being the center of attention. I have a couple friends who are type 7s, and you see that. So a type 1, with your growing, you would become more spontaneous and more life of the party, and less rigid and less strict with yourself, and more like go with the flow, which is hard for type 1s to like understand that they don't always have to have a reason for everything. That's not always a thing. But type 7 relationships are pretty, like partnerships are really good. They're actually like really compatible, because then they're 7s they can help the type 1 let loose, because type 1s are adventurous, but they don't know how to express it all. The biggest thing about enneagrams is that each number is compatible. So it's not like zodiacs, where your zodiac sign is not compatible with another zodiac sign. That's not a thing. It was made so that each number is compatible with another, so you never have to stay clear of someone. Be like, oh, you're a type 7. Don't want to be in a friendship with you. That's not a thing. You might have some struggles with a relationship or a friendship, but you're not going to not be compatible with anybody. You will always be able to be compatible. So that's the biggest thing about enneagrams that you should know. If you're even talking to anybody, don't like shut anyone out because they're a different type that you don't like, or if you don't think you'll be compatible with them, you always will. But yeah, so I guess that's all about type 1s. So next week we're going to talk about type 2s. I'm a type 2, so that'll be fun. Maybe we could have somebody on who's a type 2 and talk to them about how they feel. So yeah, we'll wait until next week, and then, okay, yeah, I think.
You ever wonder what your personality says about you and how you interact with your environment? Well, join me, Marissa, each week as we dive deep into the Enneagrams and its 9 different personality types. So, let's get personal.